taken him. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I did not care about ADP. And then I made the second revelation that by doing what I was doing, I was costing myself value. But then your ADP research taught me how to take advantage of those situations. But the first thing that I had to get to was I can't be saying, okay, Bijan Robinson's my number one guy at running back. I have to have Bijan Robinson. What do I have to do to get him on my team? No. How much better is he than the third guy, even?
Yeah.
Is the first wide receiver better than the third? Who am I going to get in the next round if I make this pick? And using your ADP, I can make an educated guess, not for the individual player, but I will understand, okay, at this next turn, I'll have St. Brown, CMC, Thomas, Henry, Collins. Oh, that gives me somebody to pick who I really, really like. That kind of a thing versus, oh, if Nakua isn't there, it's the end of the draft. You've got to draft players in bunches and in the tiers. I mean, you got to use the tier concept, but you can't be blind to one guy being that much better. If one guy is not 20 points better in MVP than the other, I don't care about whether I get that guy on my team or one similar to him. And
Right.
your ADP is research has taught me how to do that better than anything else I've ever seen.
That's good. I'm recording now, Dennis, so
I noticed that. I get the
you got to be
notice.
sweet. Uh, I did want, because I know we were going to uh, talk about your opportunity index in the show. But the pre-show, I just wanted to, there's the raw material here, Dennis. This is the best ball slim at FFPC, and I have highlighted the running backs and the quarterbacks because that's usually a break in the team here. Uh, just for the show, a concept that I like to look at is just, and you can do this quickly if people are interested. This is the ADP for Arizona is basically 89. And for Atlanta, then, it's 154. So when I see that, I see there's a lot of a little bit better players than overall, or there are a lot of uh, players that are still being ranked, but they're not very highly ranked. So
Yeah.
I'm still trying to figure out that question. In other words, why is the public worried about Ray McCloud in Atlanta, and yet in Arizona they're only, Harrison Wilson. They're not telling us about the third. The third is not even on the radar.
Right.
And I mean, I can give you, hypothesis as to why, but just you see, the data looks simple, but then you have the deeper questions. So what? Because I know about Ray McCloud and actually played him a couple of leagues last year because under bye week and the daps and things were like, he could catch a touchdown. He could get me 10 points, on a week kind of thing. And so I understand people, players like that, wide receivers, kind of hang around a little bit.
Yeah.
That you wouldn't necessarily go out to draft him, but if he's around and there's nobody else, let's just say it's really thin, then that might, yeah. And
Yeah.
so that's the thing I like to do is, Dennis, is to do that. Or I will actually go through here and mark RB1, RB2 for each team.
Yeah.
And, then I'll focus on what does the RB1s look like, in say, even in the conference level. In other words, is there going to be a lot of running? Where does the public perceive the activity at, kind of thing? Those are some deeper questions that I think you're surprised you can tease out of this. And that's the data analysis and I don't know, is that experience? Because I know, Dennis, you and I have been doing this all our life in some way.
Yep.
And you can't teach this, but it's just hammering this data, looking at it, thinking about it, moving it around, trying to, breathe it in a little bit, kind of, as Spock would say, mind meld with this data. That's
Yes.
the level I think people need to get to. And that's not a easy thing to do. I think that comes with experience. And I think your diary is one way to at least maybe chart your experience in that. If I had to say what skill would I tell people, I would say looking at the ADP differently than what, because you don't see people talking about the patterns, or they'll just kind of vaguely say, oh, it's the dead zone. And when you say something's a dead zone, it almost sounds like, well, I shouldn't even be drafting then. And that's not what I mean, it just tricks you a little bit. I mean, I flipped it and say it's the opportunity zone then.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that, you need to flip concepts around. If everybody's saying one thing, a trick I have is just, well, think of it in the opposite way.
Yes.
Deliberately say it in an opposite way, and that sometimes will make you think. So there are tricks, mental tricks that you think about. But when I'm looking at the data, I mean, I like to look at, just the color. I like to look at, the color tells me something. So I just sorted that the lowest ADP is greenest and the high ADP is red.
Yep.
So I can look at a team and look at Arizona. There's one kind of orange. Look at Atlanta. I mean, of course, I think he's not on Atlanta. Is he still with Atlanta?
He's
No.
still on that Atlanta roster.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Isn't that interesting? So, and there's Ray McLeod. And those, if and I said, well, you can do the average, but realize when you do that, these two will skew it. So sometimes you have to throw those out and then take what's you know uh, other uh, numbers here. And I think Arizona, though, it's clear that there's a good tight end there. There's a good wide receiver. There's a good running back. The quarterback, compared to Atlanta, is pretty good. So you just start thinking about teams like that. But you don't get stuck either. I mean, folks, it's not even June yet, so uh, you know, you can't let this data be stick in your head. You come back in a couple weeks, and has it changed or not? Why has it changed? So following ADP throughout this summer is fun to do, and I think there's a lot of trickiness there. I probably should do some videos on me doing that, but I like to I like to make people work for it. I'm telling you it's there. So I just told you, in this field there's some gold nuggets, but I'm not going to dig them up for you, Dennis.
Yeah, yep.
You know what I'm saying. So
Yeah,
I'll stop
so
now.
so I have a little different way of using ADP, especially early in the season. So, and again, this isn't a right or wrong thing.
Yeah.
It's a game plan that I use. So when I'm looking at ADP, I don't care about anybody over 200. Okay. Over 200, I don't even look at the ADP because at that point, I am just taking guys that have some form of upside that they could have. Okay. So let's say even in the deepest of teams, let's say we're talking 20 player benches or whatever, and I've got this huge roster of players. Ray McLeod is not likely to make that roster 10 out of 10 times, even in the deepest of leagues, because I know at his very best, and that is if Mooney and London both get hurt, he's just barely a marginal player. And I don't want marginal wide receivers on my roster. I want marginal running backs on my roster.
Yeah.
So I'll go 3 deep at a team for running back. I've got to really be convinced to go even 2 deep
Yeah.
at wide receiver. And yeah, there will be the occasion like the Bears this year where DJ Moore is the clear number one on that team. Okay,
Right.
in my opinion. I'm curious to see what the early ADP says
Oh,
on
what?
DJ Moore, Chicago Bears wide receivers. So, in my opinion, DJ Moore should be far ahead of his compadres. I mean, he should be way ahead of everybody else. I've got him forecasted to be 50% higher than Odunze and Burden. Now,
50%.
50% higher in MVP. So that should translate to better than 28 positions in the draft. Like it just should.
The Doomsday is 77.
Odunze 77. And here's the thing.
Moore is 50.
Yeah. And here's the thing. If Odunze hits his logical ceiling this year,
Yeah.
he will have been a very good draft pick at 77. But man, do you want to bet on too many players? Do you want to draft players at their ceiling or closer to their floor?
Yeah.
And I think the reason that Odunze and Burden are not farther away is because of uncertainty. They're not sure, hey, Burden could be better than Odunze. But they're also still thinking, you know what? I saw this with Jackson Smith Najigbo, and the second year he got better. And so I'm going to put my faith in Odunze to have that same jump. Well, Seattle didn't add another wide receiver. Seattle didn't change coaching staffs and then add another wide receiver. So I look at that and I'm like, yeah, I love Odunze as a player. I got some of them on my dynasty rosters. I'm not sure I'd touch him at 77 this year because there's other guys that probably are a better pick at that point in the draft. And that's kind of how I attack
He is
ADP.
21st. Moore is 21st. Dunze is, where is he? 77. He is 33rd.
Yeah, and either Odunze,
So, yeah,
or Burden will pay
Burden's
off. Oh yeah,
way down.
yeah. Either one of those guys could be top 30 this year, or even top 24. Okay, it's possible.
Yeah.
What if Burden is closer to skill set than Amon-Ra St. Brown, and now gets the same guy as coach running that offense. What if Burden is this year's St. Brown,
Yeah.
who is a bargain in the draft and goes on to have a really solid season? Now, the problem he's got is St. Brown didn't have a guy like DJ Moore in front of him, let alone a Dunze. But I can see a world where Burden hits the top 24 this year, and he's going cheap. So
he's the, where is he? He is Chicago. Where did I? 130 something. He's not as cheap as you might.
yeah, so he's going about one, is that 131 for him? 132?
Yeah, he's 49th wide receiver.
That's not horrible for him.
So, almost a WR4.
Yeah.
So Moore's a 2, Dunze's a 3, Burton's a 4.
And one of those guys is not going to live up to their billing.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Or DJ Moore exceeds his, Burden exceeds him and his, and Odunze doesn't. Like, there's multiple scenarios there. But there is a scenario in which Odunze continues to be the third best wide receiver on his own team. And that's way too early in the draft for my liking. Again, great player. If you put him on a team, if you put him on Cleveland right now, he'd be a dominant WR1 in that offense if they could find a quarterback. But having DJ Moore and Burden and Swift and Colston Loveland, maybe he doesn't live up to that billing. And again, not saying he won't, not saying he's a bust. I'm just saying at that cost, you're really asking for a lot, because I'm not sure. And right now, the way I'm forecasting the two of them, Burden and Odunze, I have them with very identical forecasts on MVP, ranging from 20 to 80. That's a huge range.
Yeah.
That's a 20 to 60. You don't even want them on your team. 70 to 80, you want them on your team. Odunze was a 5.9 last year. That's asking a lot for him to come up to an 80. I've got him as a 60 as his forecast, his base forecast. But I've got Burden at 60 as well. This doesn't tell you that I think both will end identically. What it tells you is I'm not certain which one is going to have the better season. And that's how I do my forecasting, is that if there's an uncertainty, and here's the thing, it's May. What if the Bears trade DJ Moore to a contender? All of a sudden it changes the whole dynamic yet again. But that's how I look at ADP, is I look at cost to opportunity. And right now, I can make a legitimate case that Odunze and Burden have a similar possible outcome, yet one guy's going 5 rounds later than the other. I'm going to take the later guy. I'm going to fade the earlier guy. And I might say, you know what? Everybody might be wrong about DJ Moore, because DJ Moore wasn't bad last year. Like, he was solid. DJ Moore had an MVP index of 100. That's top 14. And he's being drafted where? 20, in the 20s?
Yeah. 20, where is it? Dunze's 15. Where is he? I think he's, there he is. Right there. 49th.
Yeah.
On average.
49th, and that's probably RB low 20s, 24 maybe.
Uh, let's see, 21.
21. So here's a guy who's going 21st, who's got
Look
an
at,
upside
yeah, but
of
look, the public says 36.62, a doomsday 59.117, and
whew,
your other guy
huge
is,
variance.
yeah, 86 to 165.
Yeah.
So the public thinks that more is they're tighter on their opinion than the other two. They're concerned. There's and so what I would do, Dennis, when I hadn't thought about because I've been so focused on our combining metrics. That's what I wanted to do. But just to give y'all a hint, how I would look at that is I would tag and label each wide receiver as a one, two, or three on the team, and then I would look at which wide receiver ones have the most variance on what
Yeah,
team.
correct.
That would be of interest to me. The
Yeah, and
public would be saying they're worried. So you're saying, well, are you worried? No, what I use that data for is to inspire my thinking. In other words, Dennis's MVP is showing this. The com is saying that. In other words, it it focuses on me. It presents a question.
yeah,
Is the public right or wrong based on how I'm seeing it? And are they under or overselling that variation? And is there any opportunity? So about three questions are inspired by that simple analysis of the ADP. So that gives you another example of the thinking, and I will try before the expo, Dennis, to try to start getting deeper into the ADP. But I've been so focused on our uh, metrics. I'm trying to get all our metrics
yep.
together, and I will let me just give you. I hate to tease you too much, but just been slow. But this is an example, Dennis, of what I'm doing. This is quarterbacks 2024. So I've done all the quarterback data 2020, 21, 22, 23, 24. And so I have the Bush figure, the LR version, the slice, MVP, yours, the games, the comps, the attempts, the yards, the touchdowns, the rushing. So all that is coming. And now I'm building the wide receivers uh, as well. So I'm trying to at least get all the MVP players for that year and getting some data on them. And so I'm at 2023. It takes a while to sort all this and put it
Yeah.
together. And so, and I've got the MVP for your tight end and your wide receiver. So I've got all that. So I'm hoping, by the end of June to have this. Then I'm gonna have a lot of fun, Dennis. And I probably not can't, because we got to have secrets here. So I'll have the secret stuff for you and I to look at. But anyway, as we leave the ADP, I didn't touch on everything that I can do and like to do. And if, for the two or three people are listening, thank you, by the way. I know probably there may be more, but, not as many as needs to. But I just leave you with the hint there's a lot there. And if you see something like ADP drives everything we're doing, just like at the horse races.
Yep.
It's the odds, it's not how good
Yes.
the horse is.
Correct.
Everybody can say, there's the good horse. What's the odds for it, though? You're looking for that advantage. The good horse at high odds. I want the bargain. I want the best for the cheapest. And that is the way to go, right? What is it? The race doesn't go to the strongest or the fastest, but that's how to bet. I think Damon Runyon said that
Yep.
years ago. What he said is, the races run, the jockey can fall off, it could rain. I mean, there's just all sorts of variables, but that's how you bet. You bet, and of course, I would say you bet where the value is, and that's what ADP is. It's our horse racing odds, and we've been trying to beat those odds for years. ADP deserves your attention, folks, and we will come back to ADP patterns. And there's just so much there. It seems simple. It's not
Oh
simple.
no, no.
And don't think it is. Don't just oh. And if you're in the draft and you're going through, Dennis, and you see the ADP, like I said, it's like you're putting blinders on.
Oh yeah.
And if you don't understand the whole landscape, you're missing everything. So you need to know beforehand what the patterns are. And I will get into that. And I've done that over our shows. I've done that multiple. We've had shows where I've gone through the patterns and made comments and whatnot, and that hasn't changed. And Dennis we probably should do some articles, a little bit, but I deliberately don't, Dennis, because I like to have a little advantage in some of my stuff, Dennis.
Well, yeah,
You're
and here's
sweeter than I am.
and here's the thing when it comes to ADP
Yeah.
that I don't think a lot of people realize, because I see people living and dying by ADP over on Sleeper, and Sleeper does a better job now than it did like 5 years ago, trying to adapt the ADP to different rules situations.
Mm-hmm.
But the more unique your league is, the more worthless ADP is
Mm-hmm.
after a while.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to use it as a guide, but be more willing to dip and grab a guy early, way early, and occasionally understand, maybe I did go too early on that guy. But when we're doing our drafts at FPPC, those are standard rules. We know what the rules are. The rules are the same from one league to all 20,000 of their leagues. Their ADP is so powerful because it does give you a glimpse into what the consensus is thinking. And the other 11 people that you're drafting against, and I say other 11 because I'll rarely dip into a draft. Well, never dip into a draft in the redraft season against the professor, because I don't want him to beat me. He doesn't want to beat me.
No.
We don't want to, we want to take the money from
Yeah,
from
we're
the less
not.
smart people.
Yeah.
But in those situations, those 11 other people, out of those 11 people, I'll give you an almost guarantee that 9 of them are not as smart on how to use ADP as I will be.
Yeah.
That's a huge advantage. They might be better at understanding NFL offenses, strengths of defenses, a lot of different things than me, but I'll have the ADP advantage, and I'll have the consistency approach of advantage. So that gives me 2 advantages. When I sit down at the table, I like having an edge.
And I just thought something, Dennis. We could buy draft positions once I get the ADP and put your
Ooh,
your
yes.
your MVP. We could model like if somebody just followed the first 4 picks for ADP and what does your MVP say? Or, where it's kind of model. So in some ways, we would find what we need to beat.
Yes. Oh,
Does
yeah.
you see what I'm saying? In other words, the first pick is going to get a pretty, if he does Jamar Chase, they're going to have a certain MVP and they don't have to know ADP. So there's, the lucky concept, just because of their draft position. So in some ways, we're having to beat that kind of pattern that it doesn't matter who it is, if they just fall and pick whatever comes up, and people will put on auto draft, Dennis. I've had
Oh, yeah.
some,
Yep.
probably not in the FFPC, but I've seen some late, and I'm like, man, I just can't do that because
Oh, no.
because I'm trying to do that better than zero, and I just couldn't. I don't want that seventh wide receiver.
Oh, God, no.
But in auto draft, they'll get you that third or fourth quarterback. And so and then people say, well, I won last year. Well, I understand. Lightning does strike somewhere, but that's not how you win consistently. And I don't ever auto draft unless, there's just something like my power's going out or there's a hurricane coming or something is crazy. And that's why I like slow drafts. So I have time to think about it. But anyway, Dennis, I think, and I don't know when I'll do this, but it would be curiosity. Say just the model is you pick a WR, RB, RB, WR. If somebody followed just the ADP, what would 12 drafters give us after four? Say they don't take a tight end, they don't take a quarterback. What would you and I have to beat on average, that MVP? I
And
couldn't tell you
yeah,
right now, but I'm
no,
just saying
no,
that
but
would be interested to know. It almost sets that bar of what do we have to do to beat those. I hate to call the word dumb picks, but dumb money, dumb picks.
people that are going along with consensus, it's just like
Yes.
the people at the horse track, they'll spend the first 5 or 6 races trying to be smart, trying to outsmart the consensus. And they go 0-5 or 0-6. What do? They double up their bet and they go on the favorite
Yeah.
because they are, man, 3 favorites in a row have won. The favorites are coming in tonight.
They're
How many
due.
times you hear that
They're
happen?
due. Yeah.
So they line up on the consensus, they double up their bet, and they lose twice as much. Like you cannot blindly chase consensus and be a winner over the long haul in horse racing because the rake will just eat you alive. It's no different than going to a casino and playing red or black, and you never change your bet. You just play red or black. They will siphon your money away from you a small percentage at a time.
Yeah.
It's you've got to understand when to take your shot in fantasy football. And that's where game strategy comes into play. If I go to play a roulette wheel, I can leave with $100 profit if I bet smart.
Right. Uh-oh.
And because I will keep doubling up. And as long as I got a big enough bank, I won't run out of money before I finally hit my black or red, whatever I've
Right.
decided to play. And I always play black.
Mhm.
So, but you can do it. It takes you a long time to grind out a small profit. And there's that fear of a big loss if you go on a really bad streak, and you better have a big bank. So it makes no sense because you need a bank. And I've done the math on this. you need a bank of about $5,000 to come away as a $120 winner with some kind of certain level of certainty, of it happening often enough. But obviously, you do that 10 times in a row and you have one bad night and you can flush the whole pay, the whole thing. Like weird stuff happens. That's why casinos are usually getting better unless they're owned by Donald Trump. And that's the reality. But over the course of time, I have been able to go into a casino, come out $100 winner out of smart play, just like I can do the same thing at the horse race track, playing the right odds and upping my bet. But then you have to have the that you have to walk away a winner. You cannot flush the money back. And that's what people lack. In fantasy football, you don't get to flush the money away until the next season again, unless you play DFS for the playoffs. Yeah. But the idea is if you are smarter in how you use the data than the other 11 people in your league, you have increased your chance for success. Notice I've said you haven't guaranteed yourself anything, but you've increased your level of success. And if you can get enough increases going in your way and then get a little luck during the playoffs, then you're going to cash in big. Yeah. But even if you just get the average amount of luck or even less than the average amount of luck, you can make up with it with good strategy. And we've proven that over the years.
I agree. We probably should start the show.
All righty, Professor, let's crank this baby up. The pre-show is sometimes very philosophical, folks. That's why it pays. That's why you've got to pay both fees.
Yeah.
For the pre-show and the regular show.
And the regular show.
So you get all of this enlightenment. Here we go.
Okay.
How you doing, everybody? This is Dennis Michelson. Welcome to the science of fantasy football. Why the science of fantasy football? You get a meteorologist and a biologist together. They're going to use a scientific method, and that is guaranteed to make you a smarter fantasy football player. Notice I didn't say guaranteed to make you an absolute big winner as a fantasy football player, but it will make you smarter. And anything that makes you smarter increases your odds on winning money. And he's going to be joining me each and every week, all season long. As always, it's my partner in crime when it comes to the science of fantasy football. He is a professor. He's the fantasy professor. He's a real professor, emeritus. That's John Bush. And John, I think I finally figured out what emeritus means.
Uh-oh. What does it mean?
Emeritus means that you put up with students so long that they decided to give you another title.
Yeah,
I think that's it. It's like it's like for putting up with the persistence of students and their angles. You got to call yourself emeritus.
Yeah,
at the end of it all.
I feel the emeritus wore out. What I feel. Yeah.
Well, Professor, it's great to have you here.
By the way, Dennis, I thought you had a real good showing on the sports affiliate show this week. I enjoyed your philosophy. You paired it a lot of your newest article, The Art of the Forecast, and everybody should go to the Science of Fantasy Football to read that. And you did speak of your opportunity index, which I wanted to get into a little bit today.
Yep.
And that's coming, but I did want to give you and Rick and JC, Mr. Carlton, thumbs up. I thought everybody did good. And, Dennis, he's always the clown, but hard to get him to talk, guys. You did good getting Dennis to talk and tell us his secret stuff. And I enjoyed that show. And folks, you could follow the sports affiliate as well. Those Greg Kellogg's group and good folks, good people. Follow early and often and watch their show.
Watch
Was
their
it the
shows.
Thursday night
Yes, that's
shakedown?
that's the Thursday night check down. They also have a show on Monday, and
Okay, there you go.
there'll be some other shows from time to time and other content that you want to pay attention to. So follow the sports affiliation on Twitter.
Yeah.
Keep up with all of them. They're all very, very intelligent fantasy football players. And that gets me to my first point. And thank you very much for the kind words.
Hey,
I had a riot the other
you
night
did. Y'all
with
were
those
having a
guys.
good time.
We had a good time. There was a lot of energy brought to that show by all three people
Yes.
and some good information as well. And we had a fun time. And I hope that resonated as well. But that gets me to my first point that I want to mention today, because I see
Is
too
this a
much of,
gripe?
no, this isn't a gripe.
Oh,
This is
I
a
like your gripes.
philosophical moment of the
Mm,
show. How about that?
I
You,
like gripes.
I guess you could consider it a gripe because I
Okay.
am kind of scolding people.
Oh, I like when you're harsh and strict with folks. That's good.
So what I see too much of nowadays, Professor,
Yeah.
is too many know-it-alls.
Yeah.
Too many people. They've got the answer, and you
Yeah.
don't have to go to the next page because here's all the answer you need. It's right here, and that's
You
all.
mean
It's instant.
May 24th and you figured it all out? That's
Big
nice.
figured it all out, and that there is no other way to look at the data than the way you're looking at it. Okay, there is so much lacking in that, but the biggest problem that I see are so many of these lone wolves that are out there. And what I encourage you to do today is to look at the best of the best in the industry, the guys with the biggest names in the industry, whether that's a Matthew Berry, whether it's a Bob Harris, whether it's a Jim Coventry. I could go on. Jeff Manns is another one who I've got great respect for, because they're not only good noise makers, they're not only good entertainers, but they know their stuff, folks. They are smart people. And this goes for a lot of the other names that are out there as well. There's so many smart people that are uncovering different surprises in the fantasy football data. But too often we operate in our own little silos. If the professor and I operated in a silo, each to our own, and we never compared data, we never discussed data, it was just, here's my way, and now I'm going to be talking, and here's my way. And we never learned from each other. We never learned from the collaboration. We'd get better at what we're doing, but we wouldn't get better as fast. When you collaborate in any scientific pursuit, any pursuit of data, any pursuit of forecast, if you collaborate, you will not only succeed more often, you will succeed quicker. Case in point, Professor and I have now been working, this will be our 4th season that we're working together. We didn't get just 4 seasons smarter, folks. We probably advanced our knowledge of fantasy football by 15 years worth of what it took me to do on my own. Because we bring out the best in each other when we collaborate. And that's even if you're not all that great at collaborating. And the professor and I happen to be really good at collaborating. So for us, the result is even better. But get out of this lone wolf mentality, because in reality, in life, the wolves operate in a pack and they're much more successful. when they're in a pack than when there's only one of them trying to feed himself or herself. So collaborate and you will succeed.
I like that, Dennis. That was a good deal. Uh, don't know what to say to that. Collaboration is good. Science is built on that. And uh, one day, maybe in fantasy, there'll be scientific journals that will be publishing fantasy football stats and informatics. I don't know if we'll live to see it, but that would be really nice. It would, what that does, it allows people to have a shortcut to ideas that they can then build on, and that pushes the whole field forward. Right now, we don't have that. So we get people that rediscover what some of the old timers, original gangster type that, they already knew it. And so it's kind of a waste. I wish that there was a, journal that we could all look at the index and at least read the abstracts of everybody's research, and that would push things along. It would make it harder for all of us. When Andy Beyer developed his Beyer numbers for horse racing, it made it harder because everybody had access to the data. So realize that the more common the data is, the less valuable, right? It's like if you go into a library, Dennis, the most valuable books are the ones that you haven't read.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that's what we're trying to do is move along. We do keep some secrets here because, hey, there is no journal. They don't pay us a professor's salary to publish in these journals. And so we keep it to ourselves. We have our ROIs and we make money. And I got to earn some trips to Disney World to see Dennis and his family at Disney World. He uses some of his money for that. And hey, uh, we got to earn that Disney money, keep our wives happy so they won't get cranky at us because Dennis and uh, we probably say things we shouldn't and get in trouble. But we've been, married a little bit of time, and you learn. But that's a whole nother podcast, right? That's blood, sweat, and tears it takes to stay married. Intelligent women, let me tell you, you got to be on your P's and Q's all the time. One little slip up, honey, do you like this dress? That's a trick, Dennis. You're gonna lose. So best to think, how can I get out of this trap? They're constantly throwing those traps out there, and you got to jump through the bear trap. You know, does this make me look good for the party tonight? Ooh. I always do that, but it really brings out the jewelry and your eye color. And that usually gets me through a lot of that, Dennis, but it can get tricky with some of those trick questions.
Oh boy, Professor, I got to live that
Uh-oh.
last night because
Uh-oh.
my wife's got a big party coming up
Uh-huh.
in June, end of June,
Yeah.
third week of June.
Third week.
Her youngest daughter is getting married.
Nice.
So they're having a big bachelorette party for her up on some cabin in the lake up in Michigan somewhere.
Wow.
And so they're having all kinds of themed nights for that big weekend. Okay.
Nice.
So it's a Friday, Saturday night.
Yeah.
Okay, they're going to be up there. Actually, she's going to be up there Thursday night because they got to set up on Friday. But the whole party is just 2 days, 2 nights. I think I'm now married to Mary Tyler Moore because there are 6 dresses that I had to give my opinion of
Yeah.
yesterday. So I'm not sure how in
That's
2 days you're going to wear 6 dresses, but
yeah.
I could stay in the same pair of shorts and just change t-shirts and be happy all weekend. But yeah, so I got that times 6 yesterday and I passed the test.
Excellent.
And I know I passed the test because I woke up this morning.
Yeah,
So
that's right. That's
that's
right.
how I passed
Nice.
the test. But
Nice.
yeah, no,
Nice.
it can be very, very, very difficult. But you're right. We do try to keep a few of our fantasy football secrets because I'm not allowed to keep any other secrets. Um, but Professor, in the
Dennis, I got breaking news, and I didn't see this
oh
yesterday.
oh
Slaw Dog won the Weenie
oh
500. You were talking
yes
about the cold slaw coming off the Oscar Mayer Weenie Mobile was an
yeah
issue. Apparently, Slaw Dog was able to survive, and I was actually looking at that. So,
yeah.
uh,
So Sonora Dog had built itself out to about a 3 bun lead
yeah, yeah, I
on the
see
final
that.
lap. Okay,
Yeah,
so heading on to the back stretch,
yeah.
and then all of a sudden the grill overheated.
Ooh,
Smoke started billowing,
Sonoran Dog. Yeah,
and the Sonoran Dog
yeah. Slaw
slowed
Dog.
down to a crawl.
Oh,
And that left the Chicago Dog
oh, there was a Chicago
out in
Dog.
front. And then the Slaw Dog beat the Chicago Dog
Oh man.
at the end of the race.
How about that? So anyway, we
It was
we
thrilling.
probably should have done a handicapping of the different weenie mobiles. But anyway, I did want to break news because silly me, I didn't know the Slaw Dog had won the race here, Dennis. So
It was an epic battle.
yeah.
And I got to give credit to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway for coming up for
Oh
something
man, wasn't that great?
totally fun. So, um, guy that I know well, the voice of the Indianapolis 500,
Yeah,
he played it up perfectly
nice.
because before the race, he had everybody, please put your hand over your stomach and feel free to sing along to the Oscar Mayer Wiener song.
Oh, I like that.
So yeah, so they played it up. They had so much fun. They put so many puns in the bun
Yep.
for a 2 lap race. And
Nice.
so yeah, I hope they keep doing this because it was a
Yeah.
great deal.
Anyway, back to
Well,
fantasy football. But
back to fantasy
yeah,
football. So, Professor, in the pre-show
yeah.
today, we were talking about ADP.
Yes, we were. And I gave
Okay.
some hints.
And you gave some great hints. And I do encourage people to pay attention this spring and summer
Mhm.
to the ADP research that you are doing
Yeah.
because they can do a similar style of research for their favorite league, or if they play an FPPC,
Mhm.
they can benefit off of your ADP data. Now, if you play against Professor and I in FPPC
Front row.
using our ADP and MVP and all of our other data,
You.
please give the courtesy of letting us know that you are in the league so we don't fight over each other
That's right.
for the same money. But I wanted to mention
Yeah.
a little follow up to that discussion. The trouble with ADP. So here's the trouble with ADP, and it's ironically the trouble with every way that people try to strategize in the draft. They want one answer, and they
Yeah.
want one answer that never changes. I'm going to start a zero RB guy, and hell and high water, I'm not drafting a running back until the 5th or 6th round. They even have a different definition of what zero RB is. But they're going to stay with it. I'm not picking a guy 5 picks before ADP all draft long. If you paint yourself into a corner when it comes to data, when it comes to strategy, don't be surprised when you're sitting in that corner and you can't get out because the paint's wet all the way around you. The trouble with ADP and how people use it is the same way that they're wrong with every strategy that they use. You have to be adaptive in fantasy football. If you change only one thing about the way you play fantasy football this year, be adaptive. Be able to move when the other guy makes a move. I hear so often, well, I want to start the run. I don't want to be on the tail end of the run. Sometimes you don't want to be on either side of that run. You don't want to start it. You don't want to end it. You want to have grabbed the best value. You want to care about what other people are doing. You want to see if that gives you a hint on what others are doing. If their pick is between you and the next time that you pick, that's very important to have a little bit of that information. But be adaptive in how you use ADP. Have a game plan. Have a system like the professor will teach you, but be ready to move if that draft is moving in a different way. If the professor's data tells us that there are 5 running backs and 5 wide receivers gone in the first round, every single high percentage of the drafts, and all of a sudden 7 or 8 are gone at one of those positions instead, you have a piece of data that you can use to adapt to the next stage in that draft. So my goal in life, the rest of the time that I'm flapping my gums about fantasy football, is to convince people to be more adaptive in everything they do, and you will have more success.
Nice, nice, nice. I like it. Put that in my memory banks to apply when needed. I wanted Dennis to hit hard in the show the early edition opportunity index, because this is with your better than zero strategy that people should visit. And I know we've got that somewhere, probably last year, maybe. Probably should put that out. Here's your MVP index background articles here. I'm looking on the side, but anyway, it's hidden, but hey, we want to make you work for it, I guess. One day we'll have our own curator for the website, but right now we don't. So anyway, your index, and you have a great article. I loved it. And man, these charts, man,
Woo!
look how pretty they are.
The
So
professor did some work.
yeah,
Or
yeah,
the editor, it didn't
yeah,
anyway.
yeah, editor, yeah, that's it. Uh, how do you want to approach this? I love the visual, but why don't you set this up, Dennis, and let's go through it. And then what I'm going to do is I've got the ADP data currently, and we can then look at some of these backfields by team and just kind of see what players are there or not. And maybe your opportunity, can tell us about some of these situations, whether
Yeah,
it's
so
worth, you know, targeting these people or thinking about it or whatnot.
absolutely, because it will come into play on how much they cost. Like, it's not just a slam dunk. Ashton Gianti is number one on the opportunity index, so he's the guy you have to have on your team. It doesn't work that easy, but just to refresh people's memory on how we got here, and we went into this a lot in detail on the previous show, so I'll just touch on the basics. I did the research and found out of the last 65 guys that lost their jobs at the running back position, all of them had one thing in common. They finished the previous year with an MVP index of less than 100. Right. So that's what I used to calculate. Now, in opportunity index, it's possible to be so bad and be the only guy on the team worth giving the ball to that you can have a negative MVP index. But I decided that you're only changing because a guy is really bad. So I'm not going to add the negative points, because the only reason a guy ended up with negative points is because everybody else was either hurt or everybody else was equally ineffective. And the odds of that happening 2 years in a row are very small. So I cut off the opportunity index calculation at 0 from the year before. And I just simply look at what's left on the roster to compete with a rookie, a young player, meaning someone with less than 3 years who has not had a chance yet to be the lead running back on a team, or a guy that might have had some past form that was okay, and now he gets another chance with a new team. For instance, Miles Sanders to Dallas this year. Back in 1980, or 1980, back in 2020, he had an MVP index of 83. That's fact. That was top 20 in weekly value defined by the MVP index. Now, you can argue whether the MVP index works or not, and you're welcome to say that consistency doesn't matter. You can do that all to your heart's content. I know, because I learned from one of the best, Bob Lung, the godfather of consistency, that consistency matters if you measure consistency the right way. But Miles Sanders got a pedigree. It ain't a great pedigree, but at least he's got a history over 80 on MVP. So now he goes to a situation where the holdover, which wasn't really a holdover because it was a guy who was traded in, Javonte Williams, was brought in this year new. His MVP index the last year was a paltry 33.3. So that's how I calculate the MVP index. Now, that's not saying that either Blue or Sanders is going to have an MVP of 100 and therefore they're going to live up to that opportunity index. It just says that there is an opening that is available to be filled. And since the opportunity index starts at 100, Ashton Gianti can't be any higher than that. But the question is, what's the probability of success? You notice that the editor put in this wonderful table a question mark. And I love that, because in my way of thinking, when you put a question mark into the chart of a scientific piece, isn't that telling us this is a hypothesis?
Yes. That's what I meant.
And I think it's a hell of a hypothesis to say.
Dennis, I put that there as a bookmark for us to improve.
Oh, yeah.
I arbitrarily decided that it was the best it could be was 80%. And that goes back to, and I don't know quite what book I read in horse racing. Might have been, I don't know. is one of the so-called experts in horse racing. He basically said when you're setting an odds line, you should always set 80-20. That assume that 20% is chaos and 80% is probably explainable somehow.
Yeah. Yep.
And so I started there, Dennis. And so Dennis was high on Giante at 100. And if you look at his other ones, the best was 80 with the wide receivers. So I said, let's set that at 80%. And then I calculated everybody else's probability on the 80%. Maybe it turns out in a few years that should be 60. Maybe that turns out to be 85. I don't know. But it's a start and it gives us something to look at. Plus, fantasy receipts can roast Dennis because they and I can sit back and laugh. Well, Dennis said that. Yeah, he did, didn't he? That's Dennis's fault. But anyway, it is brave, Dennis, for you to put the 100, but I just wanted to really shoehorn you in and put an 80% success chance there,
And
even though we know that that is just an educated and maybe even not an educated guess. But that's
actually,
where it came from. 80-20. That was the ratio that I remember from horse racing.
and are you ready for something that'll absolutely blow your mind?
What's that?
I didn't show you all the data.
No,
On
you
the
didn't.
other side of the equation, I showed you that 65 of the last 65 that finished under 100
Right.
were replaced.
Yes.
That's true. And it's only 65 data points, folks. I'm not going to get all worked up and say this is the way it's going to be for all of time. What I'm telling you is 65 out of 65 and something as flaky as fantasy football results is pretty damn good. But there's other data. Okay. There's the guys that kept their job.
Yes.
You ready? You ready for the level of guys under 100 that kept their job?
I'm ready.
78%.
78%.
Now, some of those guys, the coach tried to replace them, and the other guy was even worse or fumbled or whatever. But the success rate is actually around 78% with a small sample size. So 80 is a pretty daggone good guess for what we can expect the success rate of being
And Dennis,
of replacing
I
somebody.
did look at the ADP, and Raheem Mostert is the perceived, notice, second RB.
Yes.
He is 250.
Oh
Giante
yeah.
is
Yep.
250. Okay. It seems to me that if he's still on the board way down the road, we're talking, 140th in by, maybe a minimum, but it just seems like an interesting play if he's one of your last picks out the door. In fact, I'd probably, because of the attention Jonte's going to get, it wouldn't surprise me that Moster, his ADP, drops because people are going to get a little antsy. If I got Ashton at 6, you know, it's like, am I going to play chicken with his handcuff or not? I just think 250. I bet you that there's going to be people drafting him a little sooner than, 12th, 14th round. There's going to be some attention here. So that may not be as good a bargain as you think, just because I think if I've drafted Gente and he's 6th, Wow, which is amazing, Dennis. But I just want to say, Moster, if I remember, had streaks and he had good weeks, and
Yeah.
you know
And
that would be logical to consider him as a deep handcuff.
using my MVP index
Yeah.
and my MVP forecast,
Yep.
Raheem Mostert ended up being RB 58.
Yep.
I will take RB 58
Yep.
as the parting prize last couple rounds in a best ball
Yep.
every single time, because here's the result. They're not going to give Giante the ball 400 times this year.
Yep.
If their offense is successful with Geno Smith and a change of coaching, they are probably going to be quite run heavy, but they've got Brock Bowers. They've got Jacoby Myers. They got Jack Besh, a rookie wide receiver. They're going to be a better offense this year. They're going to have opportunities to score points, and their defense is going to probably be better. So they're going to run the ball a lot. If they limit Gianti to like 300 carries, that means Mostert's going to get maybe 80, 90 touches. That's 4 or 5 a week, and we know what he can do with limited touches. I'm all in taking him late. I've got him on the board as the 58th best running back that I will consider this.
What's his range of outcomes, though?
His range of outcomes is 25 on the low side, maybe 75 on the high side. That's not
Man,
great.
75.
75 would be a heck of a performance. And that's assuming that he's second fiddle.
Yeah, I don't know that.
2 years ago, he was at 120. What if Giante goes down with an injury?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, his upside is 25 points higher.
Yeah.
So if you look at injury potential, you got to like him up to 100. So, and when I'm drafting a guy in best ball,
right,
I just want a live body at the end of the draft. I don't want the third or fourth wide receiver on a team if I can get the second running back. And I know Zamir White's still there. I know Sincere McCormick's still there. One of them will be cut in the preseason.
Yeah.
They brought Mostert in. They drafted Giante. They've got a plan. It's he could get 100 touches.
So
he could get 120 if even with Giante healthy.
Yeah.
We don't know.
Yeah.
But we know that there's the potential for some goodness. I'll take that goodness.
Yeah. So I would use your opportunity index data, and like I said, it's I call it the early edition in case Dennis wanted to update it later. So we have a Mostert concept.
Yes.
And we also, Dennis, you provided us with some deep plays.
Oh, yeah.
So, folks, I think some of the later picks in the best ball are going to be your debate between a Mostert type, or I don't know, with Denver, looks like RJ Harvey, you're pretty high on. Let's see who that is. That is
it's a rookie.
Estime Jaleel
McLaughlin. Yep.
222, 238, and Harvey is 36. It's not 6, 36.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, but still, so proportionately, Estime, but it seems to me the public is confused on which one because they're almost the same. So if you're using the Mostert concept with Harvey, you've got an added wrinkle that the public's telling you they don't know. Whereas they do know. They think Mostert is there. So there's some confidence. But you also have listed some of these deeper 28% Johnson, Hampton, Allen Davis, R. Davis, May. So you've got some other players on the opposite end, Dennis. And so your better than zero says we need to be looking at these deep RBs this year. So just based on your experience, where does that line go? Where do you think opportunities are going to be? In other words, where is the public going to miss? If you had to look at your list, where do you think that kind of tier gets to where you'll be able to cherry pick, in there? Because if you look, you've got Johnson, Merritt, Scatbo, Mullins, they're all in the 30s or high 28, 30, maybe Henderson 42, maybe that's the upper tier. But it seems to me you got four people that are in that same area that was a little muddled that you saw an opportunity for. Is there somebody that jumps out with you? I can look at the ADP to see who else is there
Well,
if we
here's
need
where I'm
to.
going to point out. Here's where I'm going to point out one guy that, again, I'm
Mhm.
not saying he's going to be a bust,
Okay.
but I'm saying that based on the opportunity index,
Mhm.
he's being drafted way too soon.
Oh, who is
And
that?
that's Omarion Hampton with the Chargers because his opportunity index is only 25. That's
Yeah, that's
Najee.
not,
That's
yeah, that's a low. So the Chargers, Dennis, the ADP is Hampton at 35. That's almost like the other guy. He was a
correct.
36 at what,
Correct.
Denver? Is that it?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So, wow. But so if you use Dennis to break, there's no tie. The other guy is the Harvey is, wow, that's Dennis, that's crazy. That's three times difference. Three
And
plus, wow,
and it gets even worse
wow.
because J.K. Dobbins is still officially on that roster because they sort of
Well, you
picked
got
up
Najee Harris at 83.
Najee Harris is there, but you've also got J.K.
And
Dobbins
see,
who,
folks, J.K. Dobbins, when you look at the top 300 in best ball, he's not even being drafted. They're missing him, Dennis.
yeah, and that's going to be a guy that because he
He
was a
could be
free agent.
really free.
Yeah, and he probably will because he will probably be either dealt or dropped and re-signed somewhere
Is on the practice
once we get to
squad
training
or
camp. Correct.
yeah.
He'll end up with a team and with a starting or second position
He'll have an
on a depth
avenue to
chart.
jump back in.
Correct. But right now,
He doesn't.
there's three on the same team
Yeah.
that all have that opportunity, that all have an MVP index forecasted at 60 or higher.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at that, you say, man, do I want
Hampton.
Hampton that
Wow.
early when
Yeah.
I can have Harvey at a similar cost, yet his opportunity index is so much better? And Dallas is the same way. Dallas,
Yeah.
I'm not sure whether it's Blue or Sanders. Okay.
Well, Dallas right now, Dennis, in the it's Blue, Javante Sanders, and this Phil Marfa.
Yes. Yeah.
But I'm saying him and Sanders are almost tied down there for third.
Correct. Correct. And my
If I'm trying to
reality,
pick between those two, I'm probably leaning Sanders because I know for a game or two, he may be washed up, but I think, you might get a week or two in a bye week situation. Might be worth a week or two of it, 10, 20 points maybe.
yeah, and I'll take a chance because they're both relatively cheap in drafts.
Blue is 109, Javante 113. So they're the same.
Yeah, and I'll take Blue and Sanders and
Right.
leave Javante Williams for somebody else.
Gotcha.
And that's how I would use this data. So
Mm-hmm.
if I'm looking at the rookies, I'm saying there's a reason Giante should be out there all on his own, very clearly.
But you like Harvey a
But I
lot
like Harvey a
more
lot.
than the
I like
public.
Harvey a lot more than the public. And I think he's the kind of dynamic player that Denver doesn't have on the roster right now. Because last year,
Mm-hmm.
McLaughlin and Estime in part-time action, they were 25 and 33 respectively in MVP.
Which is not a lot to beat
Not a lot.
at all.
And the best for McLaughlin, and again, it was only a partial season, was his rookie year when he was a 60.
Mm-hmm. But
So
still not.
that avenue's wide open.
Yeah,
So
I
I
like
like
that a
his,
lot.
yeah. So I like his chances.
So that gives you an insight, folks, that the public is not thinking like that. We're thinking differently.
And again, Professor, I will emphasize that this concept
Mm-hmm.
has been used for several years,
Yes, you have.
but the number behind it is new.
Because I tweaked you a little bit.
You tweaked me and you got me thinking in terms of putting a number on it.
Yes,
And it's
I like
risky.
that.
In fantasy football, when you put a number to something,
It makes it
you
real,
it makes it
Dennis.
real. You risk being wrong,
Yeah, but you
but
start thinking, Dennis, that verse is just kind of a,
correct.
yeah, this.
Yes.
When you told
Yes.
me Puka a couple of years ago, you
Oh
told me
yeah.
too damn late. Still, me and the editor are still cranky about that. I didn't have enough of him. I had him on 5 out of about 50 teams because you told me about him late. I never forget. This Puka guy could. Well, damn it. This is, I'm only drafting the last 5 teams. Dennis, I needed this way back. So I don't want to be sleeping on Harvey.
No,
You're telling me
no.
now. I'm not
I'm
saying
telling you,
he's the
yeah.
next Puka. I'm just
No.
saying, folks, that Dennis is highly intrigued by him, and it's up to you guys to watch camp, watch the little tidbits, and think about opportunity here. And the public may be looking at Hampton at the same, they're looking at Harvey, and Dennis says they're completely separate.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
he's completely different tiers. And that's what's intriguing about this.
Yeah.
And then,
And
yeah,
the
and then
later,
you've got Blue and Sanders but notice the drop to 54,
oh
Dennis.
yeah, that's a big jump. That's a big drop.
Yeah. What about
They
Johnson at Philadelphia is at 50? So it
love,
seems
yeah.
those are the next tiers. What
Yeah,
about
love,
Johnson? Do you like
yeah,
him?
love Caleb Johnson, the player with Pittsburgh. He is the
But
kind of player that they will build around an offense around. He's
uh-huh.
got Jalen Warren as the only competition for the
He's
spot.
at 90. 63,
Yeah,
Dennis. That sounds intriguing. In other
very
words,
good. Yep.
folks, you might look at ADP. This is what I would do. I would look at ADP in this chart, copy this
Yes.
chart, put
Yes.
ADP, and I would do a ratio of, uh, ADP 63 over 50%. Harvey, try to get a ratio here you're trying to get that bargain. And it looks like Johnson could be intrigued. In other words, Hampton seems overbet,
He's overbet.
Harvey seems underbet, and Johnson seems a little underbet. In other words, your job, folks, is to find the value. If Dennis is giving you, and look, if Dennis completely blows this next year, I know you're not even listening to us next year. You're still pissed off at Dennis, but 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 we've got numbers and we can adjust these probabilities. But I'm hoping in 2 or 3 years, Dennis, now that I've made you do this, it's going to be part of your routine.
Oh
And
yeah.
I think we're going to benefit because you got me cranky about the Puka because I'm greedy. I wanted him on every team I could get because I'm greedy. And this is a way to harness your energy. I know you're biased with those KC, that Kansas City Chief fandom here. I know that clouds your judgment. You got that Andy Reid face screen here, trying to make you tear that off and look at the data, Dennis. But anyway,
And,
I'm liking
and
Johnson.
yeah, I do too. And that's I think if I were to look at this chart and I would say the guys that I'm most positive
Yeah,
about leading
yeah.
their team in touches at the running back position if they stay healthy.
Well, you got the probabilities for us.
So it's Gianti, Harvey, Johnson, 1, 2, 3, Judkins, 4. And the
What
reason
about
is
Blue Sanders? Is it because it's
it's
muddled?
it's because it's a muddled competition that I'm not as high on those guys. And even with Jacksonville. So Tootin is listed all by himself because
Yes,
he's the
he is.
newcomer. But there's a guy by the name of Tank Bigsby who will be a third-year player that could also be slightly in this mix. And then
Well, right now,
you got Travis
ETN
Etienne.
is
Tra-
106,
yeah,
Tootin 109. So the public can't pick, and Bigsby's 136. When I
yeah,
see
and
this, and if I'm in best ball, I'm almost thinking I'll take Bigsby
well,
because it's cheaper. In other
correct.
words, if you think all of them are the same, and I don't know if you do, but if I thought all of these were pretty close, public thinks the two are pretty close, maybe just pass and take Bigsby late if he slides past his. What is your Bigsby MVP forecast? What are you thinking this
Bigsby
year?
is a tough forecast because I think Tootin is a slightly better player than him.
Okay, so you've
Okay,
got what are you forecasting
I've
these
got
guys?
I got Bigsby at
Uh-huh.
a 30 to 80.
Wow. Okay.
I've got Tootin at
Tootin.
a 30 to 90,
Mm,
and I've got ETN. So ETN's only a year away from
right.
having a 106. Okay. So he had a 106 in 23
Mhm.
when they gave him fewer touches.
Right.
Think about that for a minute. What if
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
used Tootin and Bigsby to get him a little break and keep him fresh,
Hmm.
and he can revert back to something in the 90s? That's a very possible scenario.
Then
So
that
I've got
106 might be a nice treat
correct.
to.
So I've got him a 405, or I mean a 45 to a 105. He's got a large window,
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
but he's got the highest upside. Tootin and Bigsby, pretty darn close. And I'm not sure which one's going to win, but I don't have to know on May 24th.
Yeah, I know. I know.
Right now, I'm going to take my chances and I'm going to say, you know what? If ETN falls far enough,
He could
if
be the bargain.
he could be the bargain. And because he's going right now as the 36th, 37th running back off the board.
Hmm.
This is a guy with pedigree of a top 12 finish. So if I'm drafting the 38th guy off the board, who do I want? Do I want somebody who's going to be ordinary and finish 30th or 35th?
Hmm.
Or do I want somebody who has top 12 upside? This is what I'm got to reiterate. So I have a lower forecast on ETN this year. I've got him as the 35th best running back right now.
Hmm.
But my range of outcomes says if I'm wrong, I'm
Hmm.
more likely to be wrong because he's going to have a better season.
Hmm.
This is only a 26-year-old running back. This is not a 30-year-old guy who's hit his prime and is going down. It's very possible that his best is somewhere between those extremes. And that would be a big payoff because let's say he only gets back to a 90. Okay. 90. That's it. That's RB 19 last year. You're getting him at 37, 38. That's a huge win. So that's the way you got to look at this chart.
Right.
And you've got to look beyond just the chart.
Yeah.
Gianti has no competition. Harvey has no competition. Caleb Johnson has no competition. If those three guys are really, really good,
Mm-hmm.
they are not only all three over 50%,
Mm-hmm.
they all are, there's no competition. So all they got to do is be really good and stay healthy.
Yep.
That's a huge thing for a rookie,
Mm-hmm.
but it's better than Tootin Bigsby competing with a guy who did have RB12 upside.
Mm-hmm.
Gianti, Harvey, and Johnson are not competing against anybody who had better than an RB26 upside
Mm-hmm.
in their best year. I like that problem. Like,
Mm-hmm.
because what my research did teach me, NFL coaches do not want ordinary in their backfield.
Nope.
And the MVP index is really good. Now, so many things in fantasy football are only good for fantasy football.
Right.
They don't teach us anything about real football. You can have a great blocking tight end who also is a good red zone target. And that's why he's valuable to his team. He might only be asked to get 2 or 3 targets a game, which is not going to give him any value in fantasy football in redraft or a set lineup league. Maybe he's a best ball late pick at tight end. But he's going to make big money and he's going to stay in the league for 10 years because he does that job of tight end really good. He just doesn't do the extra things that makes a fantasy football tight end special. And we can't measure that with our statistics. I can't measure that with MVP. But at the running back position, I can measure greatness with the MVP index because that's a guy who's not fumbling, because he ain't going to be fumbling and getting the ball 20 carries a game. And he's taking those 20 touches a game and he's doing something with them. That's how to keep in the starting lineup in real football as well as fantasy football. So when we see MVP under 100, all 65 of those guys that were replaced are there, and 78% only kept their job. That's, to me, that tells me that you've got, of the guys that kept their job, only 78 came close to that. That didn't mean that the coach didn't try to replace them, but they were good enough to hang on. The closer you are to 100, the better you seemed to hold on to your job. That's what the data told me. And so it's good to infer from that running backs have to be extraordinarily good or they're not going to keep their job for long. And look at what is happening in the NFL right now.
Yep.
Guys like Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry are getting huge contracts. The rest of the guys are gone.
Yep.
After 4 or 5 years. So the NFL is telling us that what we're seeing in MVP data is actually real. And that's why I'm really excited about Harvey this year. Harvey was not a guy that I was excited about until I looked at the opportunity index, until I looked at these numbers that you forced me to do.
Yes, damn it. Yes.
You
Slave
told
driver.
me I had to do these. And it turned out to be quite the exercise. I emphasize this is a beta test.
Yeah.
But I also emphasize that this method, see, MVP existed. The concept of the MVP index was successful for 3 years before it got a name and a number.
Yeah.
Now it's gotten refined and it's gotten better.
Yeah.
Opportunity dates back to when I told you Kyron Williams and Puka Nacua are a steal this year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I told you too late. And I told you,
Late.
lay off Jackson Smith Najigba. Great player, bad situation.
Yeah, I did. I didn't draft him at all in my 50 teams. Nope, none.
And last year, I will admit that I was a little quicker in telling you
Yep,
Bucky Irving, Chase Brown,
yep.
you can't get enough of these guys on your team.
And we got
Brian
him in the,
Thomas Jr.
yep,
is another guy you can't get enough of on your team.
yep.
They were all very nicely priced.
Yeah, and that Berkey Irwin, he
Oh,
earned me a couple wins, not just victories, but
yes. Yes.
money in my pocket. I didn't draft enough of him, but other people had drafted him too. So I mean, this is not like, these are sitting out there like plums
No.
ready. You got to fight for some of these picks here.
But
So,
but
Dennis, I know we've been talking a long time. Is that besides Hampton, in anybody else in here in maybe the mid round? We've already kind of did the Johnson. You were intrigued. What about Scatbo or Merritt or
so
Johnson,
so
Chicago?
yeah,
Anybody that catches your mind in this mid pack?
yes, because R. Johnson is listed right there now for Chicago, and
Yeah,
I do like Swift. Okay,
yeah.
I think it's going to be a two-headed monster
And that
with
kind of muddles the issue for
the Bears. So
everybody.
it'll take the top end off. Okay, but
But
it's going to
look at the ADP, Dennis. 66 Swift, Johnson 162, Kyle Morgani, maybe?
yeah, Mona guy.
Monagai, 260,
Yeah,
forget that.
not worth
So,
even taking. Yeah.
but we're talking three levels, 3x Swift over Johnson.
Yes. Yeah, and here's the thing is that could be there could be another body coming in there.
Yeah.
They could make a trade for another guy. They could
Yeah.
bring
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
Nick Chubb.
Well, that's why you've got him down at 28. I mean, I'm not saying he's 100,
It,
Dennis.
and
But
that's
you
the
but you say there's something there that needs to catch our attention.
but another way to look at this data
Uh-huh.
is that means it's a 72% likelihood that Swift is going to be all right.
Yeah.
So that's another way to look at this data
Well,
is to say, you know what?
66 is not bad for 72.
Yep, Swift is not a horrible pick right now. And that's the same way with Brian Robinson.
Mhm.
So Krosky Merritt is a guy that when the MVP index was calculated, and then I looked at that backfield situation and I looked at that offense because
Right.
my goodness,
It's
that
Brian
offense.
Robinson, 85, Dennis,
Yep.
and Eckler, 138. Merritt, 238.
Yeah.
238, Dennis,
Oh, yeah.
versus
Yeah.
your probability of
30%.
30%. You see,
Yep.
that seems like if you did that ratio, that's a pretty good bargain right there.
Yeah. And
A late
I'm
pick
not
out the board.
late pick out the board, and it's a guy that I'm adding in every fantasy team that I can.
Okay.
But I'm adding him with the understanding that this is a 30% solution. And the other guy, the starter, Brian Robinson, is not horrible.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Robinson,
And with Eckler
his
too, muddying the
Eckler's
water with the
solid
passing
too.
down. Yeah.
So Eckler, his MVP dropped to 50 last year.
Yeah.
Okay. So we definitely seeing the age
Yeah.
and the lack of usage that has come into play, but he's still
He catches the ball.
that emergency guy
and
to
he can
have on your
catch.
roster. Correct. So I'll add him as an emergency. But JCM, Krosky Merritt on this roster, he's a free square.
Yes,
Take
he
a
is.
shot at him. And yeah, you could be wrong. Or if you take Robinson, if you take him a round pick, 89 to 110. Maybe you protect him late out the door.
He's 85.
JCM. So he's 85. So he's going, you would have to go maybe
JCM 80. Is 240.
Take him on the way out the door as a parting prize, and then you've got it. Now, if I got Robinson and I've got an opportunity to add Eckler and I want to start them both, I'm probably going to be okay. During bye weeks, I probably will muddle through and be okay. But if I want to shoot for the home run and I miss on Eckler and I want to grab that free square of JCM, now if something happens to Robinson or he gets replaced, JCM could be the guy. Again, 30% solution. I love these percentages because that's pretty accurate how I feel. Skatebo, I'm more up on, even though his number is kind of low. And the reason is, if you look at, for instance, on Washington,
it's Tracy, 85, Skatebo, 89. They're the same.
Ooh,
Singletary, 350.
Yeah, and I don't like Singletary at all here. I think it's a two-man race.
Nobody else does.
But here's what I think it's going to end up happening is
you can get one of those, Dennis. You're not going to be able to get both.
No, you're not going to get both. And so you have to make a decision. And when I look at the two, I see in Tracy a guy who has some limitations to his game.
What was his MVP last year?
His MVP was not horrible. Okay. His MVP was at 61. It's not great, not horrible.
RB3.
Yeah. We're talking 61 is typically, last year it was right around 27.
Yeah, so RB3. Okay.
RB3. So he's not a guy you want to build your team around.
If he gets hurt, that seems like Skatebo is, but again, there's no bargain there.
No. And Skatebo's upside is we're probably talking maybe like RB20-ish upside. So he's being drafted a little early.
Yeah.
But I grabbed him in some rookie leagues, including our rookie dynasty league. Because if I look at Skatebo and Tracy as players, and then I look at Brian Robinson and Krosky Merritt as players, Robinson's ahead of Krosky Merritt in everything you can do as an NFL running back.
Yeah.
Okay. If I look at Skatebo and Tracy, there's some things that Tracy did better.
Right.
But Skatebo's more of a bruising back. And if they want an old-fashioned battering ram who can also catch out of the backfield, he's a very unusual player. And I think 31% is pretty accurate. He's got a shot at finding that lineup.
I'm telling you, ADP on top of this, folks, is the way to go. Just copy this figure and then put ADP. I think some of these bargains, will pop out because I need, at the right time, I'm going to do that, Dennis, especially if you update this.
And some of the bad prices will show up as well because Skatebo's a bad price right now versus ADP because he's become like the glory.
But JCM is a good price.
JCM's a good price. Hampton's a bad price. He's a better player than Skatebo, but he's a lousy price this year. Yeah. That's how I would use this data. Again, notice I didn't say Hampton's a lousy player. He's going to be a bust.
No, not at all.
Hampton could be like this rookie class's best running back. Okay. That's in his range of outcomes, but he's got a talented guy ahead of him. He's got another talented veteran who's kind of lurking on the roster right now that'll probably be cleared out by training camp, but right now he's on the roster, so you have to take him into consideration. And he's a rookie. So there's 3 problems with him versus none with RJ Harvey, none with Caleb Johnson. Quentin Judkins has a fellow rookie that he's competing for that spot, but he was drafted earlier, so he's probably got the edge. Tootin's got competition. Henderson's got some
Duncans is
competition.
56, Sampson 159, Jerome Ford 187.
Yeah. And there you've got that veteran.
Why don't they like Ford?
Ford
Why is
was
Sampson, whatever, over Ford?
Well, that's a mystery, and it's because he's a shiny new thing. But we only had a 45 for Jerome Ford last year.
What
So
is Junkins? What's his range of outcomes?
Judkins, I had between a 50 and a 90. So I had a pretty high rating on him.
Yeah,
And
you
if
do.
you look career best for Jerome Ford, it was a 69.
So he's
So
never hit that
no,
RB1,
no.
barely, not even RB2.
Yeah, that's just fringe RB2 material is
Yeah,
what that is. It's
yeah.
just hanging
Okay.
out in that 24th, 25th position. And we know coaches aren't going to satisfy
No,
themselves with
no, no,
that.
no.
So they're going to take a shot at the rookie. And most likely it'll be Judkins. But yeah, it could be Sampson. And because of that grouping of players, it
Yeah,
makes me like Judkins a little less than
yeah,
Johnson or Harvey. I think
right.
Harvey is probably the bargain of this draft right now. But that's
Oh,
how I would use this data. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do more research on the past, see what kind of numbers end up going in to
I
some of the
think you
guys
are
we
to
know we liked.
add MVP range
Oh yeah.
and
Yeah.
then the ADP. If you do update
Oh,
this,
I will
say
update.
in
I
July,
will update. Yep. I'll
that
definitely
would,
update. The
yeah.
opportunity index won't change because the players that were on
Well,
the
if some of the if there's an injury or something, it could change.
injuries that could change. But yeah,
If Brian Robinson gets hurt and he's out for the
oh
season, it would
man.
change.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. Hit
Right.
the opportunity index immediately goes up to 50.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is,
Yeah.
so I would like for you to update this, in late July, right before we need to start getting serious about our drafts.
Yeah, and this is what I'm going to do this year. Is last year I've usually waited until August to do my secondary forecasting, and that's why guys like Puka Nakua didn't get found until late. I'm going to move that up to mid to late July this year. So my
I
goal
think
is to
that's
have it all
good.
done
Yeah,
by the 20th of July. That
yeah.
doesn't mean
So
we
we can
can't.
go into the expo with the secret
Correct.
stuff. Yeah, I like
Correct.
that. I like
So
that.
we'll be armed and dangerous
I
when we go
like
to
it.
draft night out and ready to rock and roll.
We probably should sign up for those.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to do that this week. Was waiting to hear all kinds of good news so I could make
Hey,
sure my summer was going to be free, and now
and it
my
is.
summer is definitely going to be free. So that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, so everybody should go to the expo. You can come find us. I'm not sure we'll talk to you, but no, we'll talk to
We
you.
will actually be holding court at the Denny's
Yeah, yeah,
just down the road from
yeah,
the Hall of Fame,
yeah,
both Saturday and Sunday morning.
yeah.
So
We
come and
call
join
it
us.
Dennis's courtroom there.
We ain't picking up
Judge Dennis.
your tab, but we will share our table with you.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Oh man, that was good stuff. Dennis, you got a whole bunch of other stuff as well. Do you want to talk about the art of the forecast that I just
Oh, let's leave that for
another
next week.
day?
We have plenty to
Next
go,
week,
but I
Dennis, I'm going to be hunting
oh,
whales
that's
in
right.
Alaska.
That's right. We are going to take a week off, but yes, you could head over to check out the Art of the Forecast article, and we will talk about that as well. My goal is to make sure that the editor has a lot on his
Oh
table when he gets
goodness.
back.
Yeah, I'm sure I will. I've got to, like I said, my summer is trying to put all our consistency metrics together with other data, run a partial component analysis, try to look at the back history, get a reference forecast of what our combo and what some of these metrics has done for us. If I could get that answered by the end of July, that's good. I haven't had a lot of time to look. I usually like a lot more different data to look at, snaps and targets and a lot of other stuff, age and some of my other data, but I don't know if I'm gonna get to that this year.
Well, we
So,
will have lots of good stuff to talk about and to
yeah,
look at
yep.
before we need to put it in action and hopefully make lots of money again for this year. So head on over to the scienceoffantasyfootball.com. Check out all of the professor's data. Check out all of the old articles. If you want to just jump in and read a bunch of the old articles, it'll really catch you up as to what we do and how we do it. And of course, come on back here next time for another edition of the Science of Fantasy Football.
Get to work, folks.
That was good stuff, man. We're hitting on all the good stuff again.
Well,
So you were going to officially be gone now. How long?
Yeah, I am leaving the 28th. My daughter will be here and my guard dogs will be here, so don't come to my house. Good. But the 28th, 28th, fly in June 7th. So,
well, you've got the compound with all of the landmines and all of the autonomous, guard things that you have to,
and my hillbilly
unarm.
neighbors,
so, yeah.
they got tons of guns. I mean, they just sit around and wait for some fool to break in. These crazies down the street with all their guns, they're just. Have you seen some of those funnies?
Oh yeah.
Dennis, they'll have the hillbilly versus like Freddy Krueger or the Scream guy comes through the door and all the hillbillies are watching football and they all have an AK-47 and the crazy monster like, oh, wrong house, and turns around, closes the door. Like, yeah, you see a lot of that on TV. It's not realistic down here. There's people got guns every damn where. I mean, they're in their car and lunchbox, their toolbox. I mean, they're just waiting.
Oh yeah,
for some opportunity to, they're itching. They got all these loads of ammunition. They're waiting for the zombies or aliens or whatever it is. They are stockpiled, ready to go with their Vienna sausage and Spam cans and lots of ammunition on top.
Yeah, there's a farm that is not far from me.
Yeah.
And I only know this because I once had to go in there to do a survey of the property when I was working for an insurance company around this area. So I had to go take pictures and survey. And as I was pulling in, it's a beautiful home that's on a part of a large farm, probably a couple hundred acres, like a little hobby farm. And the guy's got this beautiful house in the back, well off the highway. And as you come in past the front gates, which you can't see from the street, but you can if you're heading on to his property. And you're still probably a good couple hundred yards from his front door when you pass this gate. And the gate has a sign that says, "I am my own 911," and has a picture of a gun. That does get your attention. And so I was out measuring this lawn, and usually if I got notified by the insurance company that these people were rather nervous, I would be told to call ahead of time. Yeah. This wasn't the case. And they were, so I was told, just go there, do your thing. go to the door first. If nobody answers, go do your thing. They know you're going to be there. So I'm out doing surveying this huge property, didn't have to do the farmland, but I had to do the homestead. And it's got outbuildings, it's got everything. So I've got to take measurements and a diagram. So I am over on the side, and all of a sudden I hear, "Can I help you?" This lady's voice. And I look back and I'm staring into a shotgun.
Goodness.
She didn't mean me no harm. The shotgun was not, pointed, it was still pointed down, but it was not pointed in a very sharp direction down. So she could have raised that sucker pretty damn fast. And not only that, she looked like she knew what the hell she was doing with it. And she had a sidearm in addition that I could see.
Yeah.
My hands went up so fast, Professor.
Yeah.
Survey,
Yeah.
holding up my ID from my, neck, holding it in the air with both hands, very obvious to see.
Yeah.
Oh, you're from the insurance company.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's me. So yeah, we have those people around here as well.
Yeah.
They play at a much more serious level than the rest of us.
They do play.
But they do. Where I used to live, in Sycamore, Illinois, there was a small community next door that was like all of about 500-600 people, a little farm community. And I knew the sheriff over there, was a friend. He was the uncle of a friend of mine. And he told a story one day of this 85-year-old lady who blew two thugs away on her front porch with a shotgun. And I said, when something like that happens, does the DA look into it? He says, not in this county if I tell them not to.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But yeah, they take it as a little different level of seriousness.
Yeah, I'm sure they do down there in the rural part of the world there.
Yep.
Anything else we need to discuss on our
I don't know. It is what do I need to be working on while you are gone, I guess is the best thing. What will best prepare us? I had planned on looking back at opportunity research.
Yeah.
I'm going to update my better than zero.
That's good. I think the better than zero, and if you really want to make it harder for us, you could actually use your opportunity index and fuse them. You could do early better than zero targets or something, kind of almost. In other words, what would be the perfect round by round MVP draft for Dennis using your better than zero? How would you construct it?
Early version.
Give me
I love that.
The optimal plan. Not that you'll hit that, but if you had a magic wand, this would be what I would do.
Yeah, that's actually a good idea. I did that late in the season last year.
But I'm wondering.
Probably be good to look at it now and then to look at it again later.
Yeah, we'll put an early edition.
I like it. I'll have that done as well. Because I plan on being very active on looking into stuff. And like I said, and here's the thing. When you come back from vacay, tell the editor, don't worry about, I'm just going to put stuff in the email so I don't lose it.
Right. Just like when I text you about some ideas.
Yeah.
I just gotta. I want to start building kind of a dictionary concept.
Oh, yes. Love it.
So I found this app, and for like $12 a year, it's a little bit pretty good. And I have an Apple Pencil for my iPad, so I can sit down.
Good.
And just while I'm watching TV, if there's something boring, I'll sit. So that's what you saw as the start.
I like that.
And then we can start defining. But I thought you could start your own. What are just Dennis, just put the concept and we'll
Yeah,
worry
I like
about the
that. I
definition
like that. Yep.
and
Yep.
then just start defining terms as we go. But if we don't start, because we do have already, look at the jargon you and I have created
Yes.
together,
Yes.
and we're
Yes.
speaking our own language.
Correct.
And the bad news is that kind of separates, new folks from dealing with us. And I don't want to be that way, but in biology, people want to know about if, oh, I want to go to medical school.
Yes.
Well, part of
Yes.
all of it is learning the biological language, just like weather has
Yes.
its language.
Correct.
And that's part when the guy was talking about, didn't go to college. Well, some of that is if you didn't go, you're just going to have to learn the language on your own. It doesn't mean
Yeah.
you can't learn it. It just,
Correct.
so that's what college should do for you, not indoctrinate you in crazy ass opinions. No, we
Yeah.
can get into the politics, but I never had time for that because, being a, science, early on after we called the liberal arts the easy A courses. We worried about organic and calculus and
Yep.
physics, and I mean that's where I spent all my time in getting indoctrinated with physics and stuff. So, but we have to learn the language. Each science knows its language. So you and I are going to have
Yep.
to have a dictionary for people to catch up on the language of things. So I thought this
It,
is a project
yeah,
in
that's
Dennis, it's a project for the future and we'll add, but
yeah. Yep. Yep.
but we do have our own jargon
Yes, we
and
do.
and but now when you say MVP and you tell me it's a 60, I know what that means.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I can visualize. So if I'm thinking this is RB1 and Dennis says it's a 60, it's like, uh-oh, what
Yeah.
why this is not
He's
something's not
way too
right.
early. Way
Right,
too early for this
something's
guy.
going
Yeah.
on here.
Yep. Yep.
And that's what jargon allows you to quickly go through and think. That's what it's not there to keep you from thinking. It's there to facilitate and make it easier to get down to the decisions.
Yeah, this actually reminds me of a project that I did in the weather business because I invented this statistical based method of forecasting San Francisco based on current conditions and here's where you're going to be. It is almost the same logic I used to develop MVP.
Right.
But I used weather data in a way that was very controversial and that I knew would not be well received by the rest of meteorologists because I uncoupled the temperature and the dew point temperature data from 1 hour to the next. So I'd look at the highest dew point and the highest temperature, and I'd compare that value. Well, they didn't happen ever on the same hour of the day.
Right.
And I had so many people telling you can't do that.
Right.
And I'd show them the data and they'd be like, why is this working? And I said, I'll explain to you why it's working, but you have to, you can't think just on the data that's on the teletype. And this was old enough that we still had teletypes. You have to think of what these numbers are each saying about the atmosphere. The dew point is telling you how much moisture is in that marine layer.
Mm-hmm.
It will not be the same in the middle of the heating of the day, but it'll come back to that state after the sun angle gets down and we get later and the wind starts picking up, all those kinds of things, it will revert back to that environment.
Right.
The temperature is the heating of the day. It doesn't make sense to compare that to the dew point temperature at that same time of the day, because now they're not representing the same thing. You're looking at the data is together always, but we're looking at the data for two different reasons. We're looking at the temperature different from the dew point because they're both telling us something about the atmosphere. And there were a lot of people that could not handle the concept of uncoupling the data.
Right.
But I had to explain that. It took me almost 2 pages of explanation and data to show what I discovered.
Mm-hmm.
The people that were really open-minded looked at it and said, nobody's ever done that before. Why did you do that? I was like, because I didn't know that this was not allowed. Like, I didn't care. I was looking at every piece of data for a clue.
Right.
This is the clue I discovered, but then I had to go back through the science and make sure that this wasn't just, it was the old correlation versus causation thing. I had to understand what that data was telling me. And I logically concluded this is telling me the quality of the marine layer, for lack of a better description. It's the depth, it's the thickness, it's a lot of different things. And they were like, well, that's brilliant. I'm like, no, it's not. It's just because I wasn't brilliant enough to know that I shouldn't uncouple the data. Like, it made no sense to do what I did. Once I found that it had some forecasting value, I had to make sure it had some real meteorology value. And I was able to do that by talking to some people that were pretty smart. And they were like, this is what you're seeing. You're seeing the marine layer being identified. I'm like, okay, good enough for me. Now I can run with it. But we need to define these terms and also show the variance of these terms to explain each and every one of them. It's not simply MVP index, this is the definition. It's why that definition matters. And that might take 4 or 5 lines in one chart for each thing, for a lot of the things that we're doing.
But I'm just wanting to start the process.
I think it's a great idea, Professor,
And
because we
it's
need, yeah,
in progress work.
I like it. I like
Yes.
that. And
So
that's
that's
something,
why I sent you that to
yeah, and
start.
I've got it. So I've got it down on my notes, glossary of fantasy football. And
Yeah,
I've got
concepts.
whose
Yeah,
project, it's both of ours. And then I've got
yeah,
a future thing, which doesn't mean I'm going to start working it on the future. It just means it's going to be finished sometime in the
yeah.
future.
I mean, yeah. But it's just something we need to do. But I'm telling you, it's worth understanding because it helps you get quicker to that
Oh
value
God, yeah.
decision, the draft decision.
Yes.
And I
Yeah.
still, folks, with everything that we do, I still like slow drafts, eight
Oh
hour,
yeah.
6 hour,
Yeah.
because I like to take lots of time on some things. Some things it's pretty quick, but I don't like to be hurried, because we're all human and you can make mistakes, and I try to eliminate those. So
Well,
anyway,
I'm in
that's
the
why
middle.
I
Yeah,
brought
I'm
that
in the
up.
middle of 2 drafts right now.
Yeah.
And it pays to have the quick draft because I'm doing an experiment. And to do an experiment right, you sometimes have to take a little extra time to think about,
Yeah.
okay, how do I execute what I'm doing? So my 2 best ball teams
Yeah.
just one's a best ball and one's a redraft. That lent itself to a perfect study because if I'm going to do 2 drafts, why not make it worth more than just winning one league? Let's learn something. So one league, you'll love this. So one league, and both of them are drafting, like one is from the 11th, one was from the 12th, which as soon as I saw that, it was like, okay, this is a perfect test. So one of my teams is a best ball team.
Hmm.
So after the first
One quarterback,
4 rounds, no,
one
this is Superflex,
super flex. Okay.
but it's a best ball
Yeah,
Superflex
yeah, yeah.
where I will be a little more daring than a Superflex that's
Yeah.
set lineup. I want to have options
Right.
and I want good options. But after 4 rounds, and we did not do third round reversal, so it was a long wait to getting back. So my number one running backs on the list are Bijan Robinson and Jamar Gibbs.
Right.
My top wide receivers are Jamar Chase, Malik Neighbors, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. So this is the best ball. Stacks are sometimes nice to have in best ball, right?
Yeah.
You hit them on the right weeks. So Gibbs was available. I took him.
Nice.
St. Brown was still available.
Nice.
I took him. Came all the way around to the end of the third round. Jared Goff, who was one of the targeted quarterbacks, because I wasn't taking a quarterback in the first 2 rounds in a super flex.
Yep.
So now I'm going to take one most likely in the third round.
Right.
I took Jared Goff. Fourth round, I now have the decision. I can take Baker Mayfield. I can take Dak Prescott as my second quarterback. But since this is a best ball,
Hmm.
why don't I really be daring and see if I can go one more round before taking that second and third quarterbacks?
Right.
So I grabbed Sam Laporta.
Yeah.
So I now have all 4 of the best players on the Detroit Lions.
Wow. Okay.
Ballsy move, right?
All right. They have a good year. That'll be good.
So fantasy football playoffs, they're playing indoors against Minnesota where they put up over 30 points. That's week 17 this year.
Nice.
I kind of like that chance.
Yeah.
So I I looked at it, I said, you know what? I'm not going to force it into happening,
But if it happens,
but if it happens, I'm going to go. And so now I've got, and Dak unfortunately went, and so did Baker. But as far as my quarterbacks, my third quarterback, I got Tua, Cam Ward, Justin Fields, Richardson, Geno Smith, Stafford. It's a dynasty, so I don't want an old codger on the team if I can help it.
yeah.
But I wouldn't mind grabbing Stafford as my third or fourth quarterback.
Yeah.
So
Good.
I'll come around to that one. So that was it. So the other one is it's a super flex. I'm playing against good players in both of these
I'm
too.
sure.
Um, Crew Patel, remember him? He's
Yes.
going up against us, going up against me in this one league. So anyway, there's a few good people. So I'm 7 rounds into this other league. So it's a set lineup. So right now, after 7 picks, my quarterbacks, Jared Goff and Tua. It's super
Nice.
flex. I'm okay with both of those guys. They both got the upside. I've got Malik Neighbors, Puka Nakua, Rashi Rice at wide receiver, and we start 3 of them. I like my chances there. I got Devon Achane and RJ Harvey as my first 2 running backs.
Mhm.
How about
You,
that name for popping up?
yeah, you like that.
So, yeah. So, anyway, that's the difference of a set lineup versus a best ball, where set lineup, I'm not going to be as ballsy at super flex. But I was hoping Cam Ward would come back to me in that other league where I grabbed all the Lions. He just went off the board. So
Mm.
my strategy isn't working perfect, but I'll probably take 2 quarterbacks at the turn.
Yeah.
And then it's time to get the value. And that's
Right.
where I think I'll do okay. But
Nice.
yeah, fascinating stuff. Well, enjoy your trip, Professor.
Yeah, I
This is
will.
exciting.
I will.
I expect some pictures when you
Sure.
get when you get
Yeah,
access to internet, I expect some pictures.
sure.
I want to live vicariously through a fun trip.
Yeah, yeah. It's going to be interesting this year, and then Scotland coming up late June to July. Yeah,
Very good. That'll keep
yeah,
you fresh too
yeah.
for
Yeah.
fantasy stuff.
Oh yeah.
That'll keep you fresh. You'll be raring to go
Oh
when you get
yeah.
back from Scotland.
Yeah, I'm debating when to start my best ball. And don't know yet. I may wait till July this year. I don't know. Uh, Gonna be interesting. But I usually do best ball to as my mock drafts get ready for my big money. I call big money.
I have started my best balls very slowly,
Yeah,
one at a time
yeah,
to get a night, just to get myself in that drafting mood
yeah. I'll be
and
doing
to
the
get
five
used to
dollar
it.
slim.
Yep. Yep. I'm doing the $5 slims and I'm doing $3 ones over on Underdog where I had money
Underdog.
to
Yeah.
spend. I'll do the drafters ones late.
Hmm.
Did not have success over there last year, so I'll probably skip all the tournaments and just go head to head with people.
Yeah. Yeah. I hadn't played that. I'm kind of sticking right now. I might, if I get greedy and have time, may venture into ESPN or something. I don't know. Uh, you know, I don't know. I hadn't decided how I'm gonna do this. I don't know. I don't know. Depends on how greedy I get.
Yeah, I might take a little jaunt into both Yahoo and ESPN to see if I might play like $100 in each and see
See what happened.
what
Yeah.
the if the talent level has gone down, which
Yeah.
I think it has.
I haven't been in about 4 years in some of those places. I don't know yet.
I've only played free at ESPN the last few years, and
Yeah.
I haven't played Yahoo for probably 5 or 6 years. But that was
Yeah.
easy money back in the day.
Yeah. Yeah. I like easy money. I certainly do
Yeah,
because
easy
I need
money's
to,
not bad, man.
yeah, donate it to the horses. I gotta earn money to lose at the racetrack, Dennis. Damn
There
it.
you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
I guess the Belmont's coming. So when is that? Is that the 14th?
Uh,
I don't know
yeah,
when that.
something like think it's obviously not this week, not next week. It's maybe as early as the 7th.
Oh, well, I won't be here on the 7th.
Yeah.
So well, anyway, good luck if you bet the Belmont. I'm not
I've
here
been
for.
laying off the big races lately. I did not play the Preakness because
I
I
did
was
not either.
too up in the air for that. And of course, Saratoga is going to host the Belmont again, which is going to be different. So
It is going to be different
yeah,
because
June the
Aqueduct
7th. It
hosts.
is June the 7th.
Yeah, I won't be here for that. Uh, Aqueduct has been hosting Belmont too.
Correct. Correct. So
So in the
it's
fall, it will be Belmont at Saratoga. Is that right?
well for the June 7th race, yeah, it will be this
It,
year because
it,
Belmont's still closed.
it's going to be at Aqueduct or
No,
Saratoga.
no, they're going to have Saratoga for the Belmont this year. So
Oh,
they're
just that
changing it up.
week, or are they just going to?
I think they're going to be open for a longer time, and then I
Oh,
think they'll do the fall meet again over at Aqueduct.
okay,
I
okay.
think it's after the Saratoga meet, which I think they're starting like a month early, because
Hmm.
usually Saratoga used to
It's
start
August, isn't it?
after the Belmont Stakes
Yeah,
and really catch in end of July, end of August into September, and then
right,
they'd switch back to Belmont. I think
right,
they're going back to the Big A after
right.
that. So,
Okay,
but they're starting earlier, which is interesting.
it
So,
is interesting.
but yeah,
Okay,
I didn't know until I looked it up where they were having the Belmont this year.
yeah, crazy business.
It is. I